This is the state of the nation. Ibifa Uganda. We are deliberate, we are reasonable, we are uncensored. The state of the nation with Henry Sully. All right. Welcome to the State of the Nation. My name is Henry Sully, and I am privileged to serve you in this capacity. Today, this discussion begins with a simple but unsettling question. What remains of a republic when citizens begin feeling, or rather fearing, those entrusted to protect them? Over the past week, Uganda has witnessed a series of events that have sparked concern for far I hope you guys hear me. Not sure. So I want to start again. Good evening to you, and I hope you are doing well. My name is Henry Sully, and tonight's discussion begins with a simple but unsettling question. What remains of a republic when citizens begin fearing those entrusted to protect them? Over the past week, Uganda has witnessed a series of events that have sparked concern far beyond partisan politics. A former Lord Mayor and senior advocate, Elias Lukwago Salongo, was reportedly seized from his home under controversial circumstances. The president of the Uganda Law Society described it as abduction and suspended participation in key judicial engagements until answers are provided. At the same time, public statements attributed to the chief of the defense forces have circulated widely, including references to capturing political opponents, basements, and threats directed at critics and litigants. Whether one supports government or opposition is not the central issue today. The issue is the rule of law, because the rule of law is not tested when institutions protect those who agree with them. It is tested when institutions protect those who disagree with them. As Fanon once warned, that post-colonial states sometimes inherit the machinery of domination while merely changing its operations, we must be vigilant of what is happening in Uganda today. The question, therefore, is whether Uganda today is strengthening constitutional institutions or personalizing power, and whether a nation remains democratic when fear begins replacing certainty. In studio with me today is counsel or advocate Isaac Samakade, Dr. Stella Nyanzi, my friend Egesa Ronald, and Honorable Medad Segona. We're going to be joining us shortly. For now, I have my colleague, my friend Egesa, who has joined me today. The others will be joining us as we continue moving forward. But before we delve into this conversation, I want to encourage all folks who live in the diaspora or the Bazungus or the tourists uh, to visit Uganda. Uganda is visitable. Ebola is completely dismated at the moment. There is no Ebola in Uganda. Uh, there is the Renzori Marathon. So contact Mr. Wekesa if you would like to participate in the Renzori Marathon. It is still happening. It's happening in August. So make sure to register and join the conversation. My friend Egesa, thank you so much for joining us as we wait for other folks to join us as well. I'm going to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself as we start to engage in this important conversation. Egesa, welcome to the State of the Nation.
Thank you, Henry. I hope you can hear me quite clearly.
Perfectly. Yes.
Yes.
To hear you.
How have you been?
Well, okay. Unsettled sometimes, and following what is happening in Uganda. We had a conversation on Tuesday with Dr. Stella Nyazi and Advocate Isaac Semakade were unable to join you. I mean, you were unable to join us because of other commitments. But I'm pretty
weekdays
sure you know,
sometimes can be very, very tough. Yes, but I
yeah,
did
but
follow
I'm
up
sure,
that conversation.
yeah, I'm sure you know what is going on. Yeah, so that's how I am for now. Happy Father's Day, by the way. Nice to have you in the room, even though you must be really busy being pampered.
Not really, but thank you and have happy Father's Day to you too.
Thank you.
We are here in Uganda, and it seems to portend tough times ahead. The situation doesn't really paint a very good picture of what is to come. If we are to go by the events of the last few days and months, then definitely that is the only verdict or prediction that we can reach. Otherwise, Uganda will be here long after all the current protagonists and the current actors are gone. At least that is something that we must keep at the back of our mind, that Uganda will be here much longer than any of the current actors or players. So
Uganda is...
yeah, so we need to urge people to act with restraint, to be, if anything, not to be slaves to the gun, but be slaves to conscience. They should be slaves to not just their personal conscience, but also to our national conscience as a country. Yeah, some of the things we might do to soothe our personal egos might be attempting to destroy a nation. And in destroying a nation, you start by destroying a generation. So you dim the hopes. Actually, there's a friend of mine who uses the word to extinguish. So you extinguish the hopes of an entire generation. The generation of Ugandans who are in their middle age today, Ugandans in their 40s and 50s, are people that thought that we could have an opportunity to live in a matured democratic state. We believed that by the time we hit our 40s and 50s, the nation would have, the Constitution of 1995 would have come of age. Democratic practice would have been entrenched within our institutions, and we would live in a nation where the rule of law is the order of the day and no longer the dream. As things stand right now, the rule of law is increasingly looking more like a pipe dream. So we are not yet there. We are way off the mark where we thought we would be by now. Having said that, I don't know if
Right.
you want me to dive into, because I think for us to discuss the topic of the day in defense of the rule of law, we might need to have a historical context or to put things into perspective. I don't know if you want me to continue or you want to, first of all, set the stage. Yeah.
Well, thank you so
Mm,
much again for
mm,
that.
mm, mm,
Um, my colleagues, I've heard
mm,
from Honorable Segona, is
mm, mm,
just getting at home. I think he has been delayed by some
mm,
traffic coming from an
mm,
event somewhere that I'm not going
mm,
to disclose.
mm,
I've also heard from Dr. Stella,
mm,
who is also settling
mm,
in. She'll be joining us shortly.
mm, mm,
The only person I haven't heard from, even though I heard from him earlier on today,
mm,
is
mm,
Advocate Samakade. So I'm pretty
mm,
sure they will join us whenever they are ready. But this is an
mm,
important conversation. And it's
mm,
important because when you look at what transpired over the last
mm,
7 days. Last
mm,
week we were here discussing pretty much a topic similar to what we are going to discuss today, even though it
mm,
was squashed into many different
mm, mm,
conversations. We talked about the
mm,
rule of law and how it's affecting
mm,
everyday Ugandans, an average Joe Ugandan. It seems it's also interesting that we have just had conversations about sovereignty, both self-sovereignty or personal sovereignty and the country's sovereignty. It is also important that security is being security takes the biggest portion of Uganda's budget.
mm, mm,
And with that, you would think that it gives folks, Ugandans, the trust that they can be protected, that their property can also be protected, because the country is investing a lot more money in security, therefore ensuring that both that their person and property are protected to the uh, highest expectations. Yet, what we saw on Monday morning was people uh, putting on the forces gear. Uh, Many people have called it the
mm,
SFC that evaded, uh,
mm,
invaded Elias Lukwago's home, cut down the barbed wire,
mm,
broke down his bedroom door to get him,
mm,
only because he had promised to serve the CDF with the court summons to come and have some questions to answer. When you see such things happen in a country where you are investing the most in security, in a country where we have been dreaming since 1995, at least, that a constitution will have grown to protect her people, its people. When you see these kinds of violations, even in their minimal implementation, you start to wonder what is happening in the country, whether the rule of law actually is important to the people, whether the constitution still makes sense, and what the dream of the founders or the so-called liberators, how those folks view themselves in this situation. The reason why I invited a couple of folks to join us today is because many of you have better context than the people who are watching us, the people who are trying to read what's going on in the country, trying to understand what's going on. I want to invite my colleague, Advocate Samakade, was just joined us. Advocate Samakade, pleasure to see you today. And
Yes,
I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself before I delve into any more
I think.
conversations.
Thank you very much, Henry. My name is Isaac Semakade. I'm the president of the
I think you're muted.
Apologies about that.
Yeah, it's
I'm
okay.
muted.
Yeah,
I
now you're
How
good.
about now? Am I okay?
You're good. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, sorry, I had an incoming call. I apologize for that. My name is Isaac Semakade, president of the Uganda Law Society. I'm so happy to be back to this platform. And I think for the very first time with my brother, Mr. Ronald Leonard, who has been more regular to this platform than I have been. I look
Yeah,
forward to fantastic discussion. I should, however, place some apologies. Um, I thought I double booked us uh,
oh, okay.
for with some client group that has some anxieties about tomorrow.
Yeah, I know
Uh,
what's going to
in
happening
the
tomorrow.
case of yes, so I have
Yeah,
asked that I come and place my apologies here,
yeah,
attend to them, so they
and
can
then come back.
prepare themselves here, and then I'll be back. I hope
Okay,
that my leader, Mr. Segona, is here already. Not yet.
is not yet is traveling. He will settle in. The funny thing is that he told me that I'm glad that Samakad is already there. So he was counting on
Ah,
you to be
yes.
here, but
So
but he's also not
I
here
was
yet.
also counting on him. I was also counting on him. I was like, Henry won't take it so bad because he has a heavy hitter in the room. But let me see how I can keep this at a minimum. I'm really running like 4 spaces. I've had to find substitutes for all the others, but this is my
Yeah,
priority. So let me pause it here, leave you in the able hands of our rule of law sensei, Mr.
yeah,
Egesa. Mr. Egesa has provided us rule of law audits at the Uganda Society. We introduced a system when we came in that
right,
the Uganda in the name of Uganda Law Society, Uganda and society,
right,
non lawyers have as much a stake in our affairs as lawyers. And
right,
we have lived through this experience. Mr. Gessa was one of the most generous Ugandans who have provided us their gifts, their talents, their technical expertise to provide in fashioning our transition from a captured bar and hopefully to a more liberated bar at this iconic time when we celebrate 70 years. I'll be back for this conversation. Let me first attend to duty that supersedes this. Thank you very much.
no worries. Yeah, completely understand.
Sawa
Thank you so
sawa.
much.
Mm.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
welcome. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, no worries. Great. So you've seen what is happening, Mr. Gisa, as you have heard. Of course, you have provided audit to
Mm.
the Radical Nuba,
Mm.
which is presenting
Mm.
itself as the champion of rule of law, similar to what Mr. Lukwago. Ironically, Mr. Lukwago is nicknamed Mr. Rule of Law as well.
Mm.
So
Mm.
when we see the rule of law being deliberately broken by the people who are supposed to protect that law, uh, I want you to tell us what your thoughts are of what is happening in Uganda today. From the inception of the invasion of Mr. Lukwago's home to his abduction, to how that has affected his family, including his children. Today is Father's Day. His children should be celebrating him. And I wonder what your thoughts are on how they are celebrating their dad, having those images in their minds, the images that started in their household and ended up on X. How do you think they are feeling right now? But what are your thoughts on what transpired, especially during those events before he was taken to court, the conversation that transpired on X, and where we are right now as Advocate Samakada's, the president of the Uganda Law Society, has indicated? He is in an important meeting because they are preparing for a bail hearing tomorrow for Salon, and I'm sure you already know about that. I'm going to give you an opportunity to paint us a picture of what you think is transpiring in Uganda's rule of law ecosystem.
Okay. Thank you, Henry. I want to start by putting on record that I might disappoint you. First, I may not give an accurate account of the events that have transpired surrounding the arrest of senior advocate and former Lord Mayor Elias Lukwago. Because I think the social media and the journalists have done justice to that. Of course, the images are quite disturbing. They are pointing us in a direction which we don't want to find ourselves as a country. So I would like you to allow me extend an invitation to you to operate in the realm where, as a strategist, I operate. I want to see, is there something new? These are the questions that I ask. Is there something new? Has this been always the case, but we were hoodwinked? Are we taking a turn, a critical turn, in terms of the subject matter, that is the rule of law? Is this a sharp turn from maybe what could have been a existence of rule of law into a new territory? So these are the kind of questions that we start asking ourselves as we try to dig into the bigger picture of what is taking place. So to make sense of what is taking place, I would like to extend an invitation to you that we take a journey down the history lane of the Uganda Protectorate and then post-independence Uganda. And when we do that, we shall most likely agree that there's nothing new. There's just been a shrewd actor in between there who managed to put a membrane on our eyes, or who gave us a foggy look into a democratic world. But we have always been in military government. Perhaps when you look at the history of Uganda, including the history of Uganda as a protectorate under the British, you will realize the only time when we were not in what you would call proper military rule is that brief period after the Lancaster Agreement to the 1966 attack on the Lubiri in Mengo. So the rest of the time, we have been under military rule. Now, having created Uganda, the protectorate, through the use of a mercenary called Frederick Lugard, Captain Frederick Lugard, you So he kept Uganda together using military power. That's how he forged. So the state of Uganda, he forged it through violence. That protectorate was forged through violence. I don't know if you are still hearing me.
Yes, I hear you.
Okay. So now, fast forward. We are in the early 20th century, the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, and then the politically active 1950s for, that post-UN period. Early 1950s, when we see the likes of Ike Musazi, and heightened political activity by the natives, the coming into force of natives representation on the legislative council. In that period, you have a dual legal system.
Right.
That dual legal system has the British common law in Uganda. So for them, they were being treated under the common law system together with the colonial administration. Then you had customary law, which was also codified by the British, applying to the Ugandan natives, our ancestors. Yeah? So I want us to draw some comparison between that period where you have a dual legal system and the present today. The British was an occupation force in Uganda. That is why they came up with two sets of laws, one applying to the natives and the other applying to the European settlers and the colonial administration at large. Today, there are also two sets of laws, at least in interpretation of application, or interpretation of the law and application of the law. We have two classes. There is the law as applied to ordinary Ugandans, and there is the law as applied to those that are wielding power. The NRM top brass, the NRA top brass, law seems to be interpreted differently for them as opposed to how it is interpreted for or how it affects the common Ugandan. So in short,
unpack just a moment? Can you unpack what you mean by NRM top brass? Is that the same as the revolutionaries or the
NRA? Let me withdraw the M and go back to A, the NRA. Eh? The group that went to the bushes of Luero and their sons, that have given us offshoots like the PLU and the like.
Right.
So that is what I'm referring to as the top brass. Why are we even having this conversation now? It is because a scion of the NRA Honcho told the public and the world that nobody can summon him except the Father. In essence, he placed himself above the law. And it's not something that you would treat with contempt as you would treat some drunkard out in a Kampala bar who is saying, I am above the law. This is somebody occupying a sensitive position, the position of commander of the military, the Uganda People's Defense Forces. So when a chief of defense forces comes out and says that I am above the law, he's simply telling you that this law which applies to you common Ugandans does not apply to me. So, which means that he has his worldview is not any different from the worldview of the British colonialists, who felt that they needed to have a dual legal system where one set of laws applied to the white settlers and another set of laws applied to Ugandans. This is the same man who was telling you that he's leading an operation of Maliza Ofisadi just a month ago and wanted the former speaker to be subjected, to the legal system.
Right.
So which means he feels that the former speaker belongs to a different category of Ugandans that are supposed to be to face justice or to receive justice under the legal framework that is established, while he and the other Bachwezi do not fall in that category. So, which then begs the question, is the NRA an occupation force different from the occupation force of the British colonialists? Your guess is as good as mine. Yeah, on that one. So now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of what happened pre-independence and what is still happening today. Because in all these regimes, like I told you, with the exception of that brief period of 1962 to 1966, May, all the other periods, whether it has been written anywhere or not written anywhere, it has been very clear that whoever controls the military controls power. So the Ugandan state has been anchored on the military as the ultimate arbiter of political power. Nobody has managed to dismantle that. If we were to point out somebody that we would accuse for having missed the moment when that was bound to change, then that person would be the late President Dr. Milton Obote. Because had he not gone down that route in 1966, we wouldn't be there. We wouldn't be where we are today. The political course or trajectory of Uganda took a major turn at that point. That is when he changed the course of history. And the military has never left politics. Before I conclude my first part of the submission now, I want to take you to 1995 constitutional making process. We were hoodwinked by the NRA that they are making a constitution to return power to the civilian population. That henceforth, the military was to remain subordinate to civilian authority. That was a lie. Let me qualify it. It was a white, fat lie. And this is why. The same fellows insisted that they must have the military present in parliament, the House of the People. So they claimed that it was necessary to have the military representatives as listening posts. I mean, our friends in America would say that was BS. Yeah. There is no way you tell me that the military was remaining in parliament as listening posts. When you're expecting to build a democracy, you expect that parliamentary proceedings are open to the public. So, a listening post, if you know how intelligence operates, is supposed to be somebody who is there, not really contributing, but is just listening. So if we expected that parliamentary proceedings would be open to the public, including being broadcast on the national broadcaster, what was the need of listening posts? Yeah.
Do you
So
think that was a betrayal to some folks who actually believed in the professionalizing of the army? People like Nobo Mayombo, who is no longer here to witness what is going on. But I think when we examine that one person and the ideas he had about no, not just the army but the forces, because he thought about the defense forces, not just an army, but we were thinking about how we are going to expand Uganda's forces. He was not just thinking about the PPU or the ground army, but we were thinking about how do we go to aviation? How do we go to how do we create a navy? How do we create a holistic force of Uganda that is answerable to the people? Because I think in one of his submissions, one of the reasons he supported the name change to Uganda People's Defense Forces was to align it with the people's vision, with an understanding that it's going to be protecting the people of Uganda.
I think that if Nobo Mayombo was alive today, may his soul rest in peace, he would have fallen out with the government, perhaps rehabilitated like the others have been. But I don't think the way things have turned out, Nobo Mayombo, being Nobo Mayombo, would have remained within inside the system and still playing the politics of deception by the NRA. Having said that,
yeah, the challenge is
in
that,
1994, the likes of Nobo Mayombo were hoodwinked by their leader to defend certain positions. Just like Dr. Besigye tells you, by 1989, Dr. Besigye was the National Political Commissar and he was spreading the gospel of, oh, give us more time, we need to make a constitution, blah, 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 blah. But then, as time would later reveal, he discovered that he had been fed on a lot of lies. So I want to believe that a number of these brilliant guys that were in the NRA, by now, if they had not, some of them passed on, they would have fallen out with the establishment. Okay, now let's hypothetically speaking, where would Nobo Mayombo be today when MK is the CDF? Remember, at the time of his demise, he was permanent secretary, Minister of Defense. You want to place a bet that he wouldn't still be PS Minister of Defense, but he was quite an ambitious person. Yeah, so I want to tell you that most likely they would have fallen out with the establishment, and they would be on a collision path, or maybe they could have been overpowered and they were back in the state, just like you have the likes of Amama Mbabazi. But then Nobo Mayombo was cut from a different cloth, was not necessarily cut from the same cloth as the likes of Amama Mbabazi. So for me, what we are dealing with, the question of military rule, trying to suffocate the rule of law, is not a new question in Uganda. It is a question that has been there since pre-independence times and persists to date. Symptoms persist. We have had moments in history where those tasked with the leadership of the nation could have changed the course of our democratic journey and the position of the rule of law, and elevated it to number one position, but those opportunities have been missed. We soldier on and look at the next available opportunity. I think I want to first pause there and allow you to bring in Dr. Nyanzi. Then,
yeah, absolutely. Oh God. I'm not sure if we have lost my colleague. I'm not sure if I've lost my colleague. Great. Yeah, so I guess he's out momentarily, but he'll be back shortly. I wanted to play a video, but I want to play it in his presence. So I'm going to wait for him to return before I play that video. In the meantime, I want to thank everyone is following us right now. We are interrogating the question of whether Uganda is being ruled by the rule of law or by the rule of men. And a guest there was just giving us a historical background of where we have come from and where we are now. And of course, interrogating how some pieces of the puzzle were either deliberately eliminated, or if they weren't eliminated, they wouldn't have survived living in this state of Uganda's state of the nation. Dr. Stella, nice to see you. Welcome to the State of the Nation. Of course, we are discussing the rule of law in Uganda. And we are anchoring ourselves in the events that happened on Monday, and of course, which are happening today, and also anticipating what is going to happen tomorrow in the High Court. What's going to happen to Salongo Elias Lukwago, but also what is likely going to happen to Dr. Kizza Besigye, whose pending case has now no counsel to work on it as they prepare for their defense. Dr. Stella, welcome to the State of the Nation, and happy Father's Day to you too.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for organizing this space. Unfortunately, I'm in public transport right now and may not be able to speak freely. But I was listening to what Agesa said, and maybe you said you had a video. In the next 5 minutes, I'll be able to talk. Is it possible for you to play the video or for you to keep talking?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So
Thank
much
you.
again for joining us. Brother Gesa, welcome back. I know you got off the screen, and I was wondering.
No, my computer switched connections. I have two connections. So it
okay.
switched when one is off, it switches to the other. So it switched to one which was on. I had to go off and then come on again.
Okay, so Dr. Stella is unable to
so
speak right now, but I'm going to play some videos because we're talking about our history. We're talking about the NRA. We are talking about the people who would have survived within the NRA. And those who
No, I have a lot to talk about that history. I was still going on only that. I felt that it's improper when Dr. Nyans is here and prepared for the show.
Well, so she is prepared. Yeah, she is prepared. But before you proceed, I'm going to play one of these videos, and I want you to proceed to
Okay.
Just a moment. I'm just looking for this video, and it's and I think one of the reasons why this video is important for those of you who do not know the history of Uganda is because at the moment we have only one general who is vocal about what is transpiring in Uganda. Not a very perfect man himself, but nonetheless the one who is courageous to speak of the events that are transpiring in Uganda's ecosystem, specifically within the army. There are many generals. Some are still serving generals within the army. They know that when you are in the army, if you're not yet retired officially, you shouldn't be participating in the politics of Uganda's of Uganda, really. Yet there's one person who continues to participate in politics, regardless of what is happening. He thinks he's above the law, and he doesn't seem to know that it is governed by the same law that he wants us to prescribe to the people who serve in Uganda's government. So the only general right now that is trying to rein in on him is not his father, he is not his uncle, he is someone from a distance. And this is General Kahinda Otafile, who has been very vocal in different spaces, challenging how this gentleman, also called gentleman, is conducting himself in the public arena. So General Kahinda Otafile has this to say, especially regarding the revolution which Egesa will expound more on.
Of the situation from what it was to what should be obtaining now. And that's what I live.
Just a moment.
I live for ensuring that what we fought for a revolution, change of the situation from what it was to what should be obtaining now. And that's what I live for. I live for ensuring that what I fought for, it lives after me. Our revolution was a revolution of the intellectuals and the peasantry. I'm now looking at another class that is coming in, grafting their ideological bankruptcy onto our noble ideas.
That's one of the sentiments that Genoka Hindo Tafile has, but he has more than that, because that was before he actually visited the Radical Nuba. But when he visited the Radical Nuba, he also had a different kind of message for them. I also want to play that. And in playing that, I'm also encouraging people to listen very keenly, very carefully on what he actually encourages citizens of Uganda who care about the well-being of the country to engage in. I think he cautions them not to embrace the sin of silence.
I've made myself loud and clear that certain things that are happening are unacceptable. Ladies and gentlemen, don't commit the sin of silence.
Do not commit the sin of silence. Brother Gessa, I think this is the time for you to unpack what General Kahindo Tafile is talking, because he's the only general right now who is speaking up. We know generals who have faced potential. I mean, we know some generals have faced attempted murders, but they continue to be silent about what is transpiring in this country. Even some of them who have lost very close family friends throughout some of these challenges that have happened. Your thoughts on what Kahindo Tafile is referring to, and where he's kind of
no,
his
you need to, even within the NRA, you need to understand the kind of general that Otafire is. There is a huge difference between Otafire and Jim Muhwezi. There's a huge difference between Otafire and Tumukunde. There's a huge difference between Otafire and Katumba. These are people that joined Museveni's journey along the way from different under different circumstances. But Otafire believes that he belongs to the original ideological setup of the Fronasa. It's not just not just that he believes, but indeed he was. The Otafire is, you see, President Museveni tells you that he first met Otafire in 1974. And Otafire was introduced to him by Amama Mbabazi. So there's a group of people who knew President Museveni before the Luwero War. That group includes the people who were with him in Dar es Salaam, 1967 to 1970. The people who went with him to Mozambique during that same period. The people who worked with him in Fronasa as they engaged in subversive activities aimed at painting the regime of Idi Amin as a brutal fascist regime. So these people, many of them, especially those that took up the military path, have gone to be with their creator. So Otafire remains, I think, the only one who took the military path who is still alive today and in active politics. So when he terms the group of General MK as ideologically bankrupt, he cannot be dismissed. He needs to be placed in the right. His remarks have to be contextualized. He has a higher understanding of what their dream was at the time when they were in their 20s. So where I feel sorry for him is that perhaps he does not seem to understand or to appreciate that the leader, their leader, revisited the priorities and the dream and went on a completely different path altogether, thereby abandoning the original dream that they had and they fought for. So now he needs to come to terms with that reality, that it seems the leader not only abandoned their original dream, but has been an enabler and a mentor of the new group that Otafire refers to as ideologically bankrupt. Who has been the enabler? President Museveni. So the common denominator amongst all these, the 1970s group in Fronasa, the UPM group in 1980, some of these UPM fellows have died. The likes of Ali Muabe Chirunda Kive Jinja have passed on. So that group, together with the group of now the Tumukundes, the Muhwezis, the Sejusas, the group that joins Museveni post-UPM politics, when he starts the PRA that went to the bush in 1981. The group which has the Eli Tumines, then there was the group which was within the military, the Jejo Dongs, the Katumba Wamalas, that collaborated with the rebels, and then managed to, to end up in the NRA. All these groups have Museveni as their leader. That is the common denominator. Then now you have the group of Kasenyi, that the LDUs that came with General Mohozi. They also have Museveni as their leader. So the question then is Museveni still true to his ideals as he purports to be at times? Or he has since abandoned the ideals that they stood for in 1970s and in the early 80s when they were in the bush, and he has he has morphed. Let me say he has morphed into somebody else, maybe shaped by the current global dynamics, to begin now supporting this group that Otafire calls the ideologically bankrupt group. So now that is
We seem to have lost my colleague Egesa. I think his computer has switched to a different computer once again. It's disconnected to the studio for the moment, but we continue speaking and talking to what is happening in Uganda, examining the rule of law in Uganda. For the folks who are following us, thank you so much for following us. Please share with your folks, share this widely, let other people come and engage in this conversation. As Egesa comes back, we shall delve into trying to understand who is General MK, who is General Muhoozi. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Yes,
My brother Egesa.
I was hearing you as you are talking. I
Great.
don't know.
Great.
Yeah, but okay, just an intermittence somewhere in the connection, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I was saying that if you ask me as to whether President Museveni has changed and he has discarded the ideals that they stood for in the 70s, the early 80s, when they were in the bush and all that, I think he hasn't necessarily changed. there are two factors that have come in. The first one,
We've lost
you have lost me?
your video.
Yeah, no, I had just forgotten to put back camera. So I'm saying for me, there are two factors. The first one being that President Museveni is captive to the presidency, we called the Mad Tiger before. Now you can clearly see the Mad Tiger I was talking about. The developments of the last 1 week can show you the actions of the Mad Tiger. That key players within the presidency can drive him into a territory that he probably wasn't willing to go at that particular moment in time. And those people have entitlement. So he's atop a Mad Tiger. So therefore, the belief system that he came with from the bush is no longer the belief system that takes precedence when things are happening in the country. There are several other factors. So in mathematics, we would say if he was dealing with a first degree or second degree polynomial at the time, when he came into power, things have drastically changed. That is now dealing with a fifth degree polynomial. So many factors are into play.
Right.
So one of those is what I call the Mad Tiger. A president sitting atop a Mad Tiger, which decides that, no, you want to go there, but I want us to go this way. But the president cannot alight. He has to cling on it to be safe. He has only one safe place to be, to cling on top of that Mad Tiger. So the Mad Tiger is a symbol of all the different forces at play within the palace, within the presidency. Yeah? Those forces at play include suitors in the succession battle. They include in-laws. They include friends that were promised, but later on betrayed. They can still move a few things here and there. So that is where we are. So now, that's the first, for me, I think that's the first explanation I can give to try and make our friend General Tafire to understand why what he calls ideologically bankrupt group is taking center stage while the commander is still around. Yeah? The commander is around, but he's held hostage to a Mad Tiger. The second reason is selfish motive. You see, in the 1970s and 1980s, early 80s, when they were in the bush, they were going to hunt the animal. At the time when you are going to hunt the animal, many people will promise you heaven on earth. But when the animal arrives, you have hunted it. Selfishness sets in. People become inward looking. Sharing the spoils becomes a problem. And then now, you find that a man who promised you heaven is delivering purgatory. So he says, you guys, you are going to be in the waiting lounge in purgatory as we prepare for you heaven. Well knowing that you might actually die during your time in purgatory. As you are serving your time in purgatory, you might die and you might never see heaven. So those that he prefers might end up the ones taking your position in heaven. So for me, those are the two lenses through which I want to see the frustration expressed by retired Major General Kahindo Tafire. And I think the same could go for the frustration of the likes of retired Major General Mugisha Muntu, who has also come out and spoken in the last few days.
His message has actually been very sharp and directed at the president. And I think, so these people need to make, to come to terms with the two things that I've told you. They need to be sympathetic to the president that he's beholden to interests beyond his control at the moment. They are so entrenched within the presidency that he cannot do much. But also, they are intertwined with his selfish beliefs.
Yeah, I think that is true.
Yeah, so if the interests that are holding you at ransom tend to coincide with your selfish beliefs, then you cannot remain the same in shape, philosophy, and structure. So I think that is where President Museveni finds himself. And his colleagues should be able to now place him properly in that position in the context of what is happening today. If you allow me to just pick up the earlier submission that I was making, President Museveni went to the bush because, having served, you see, prior to going to the bush, he was a participant in the Moshi Conference of 1979, before the fall of Idi Amin. What was clear in that Moshi Conference was that power would have to first be taken back by military means, yeah, before civilian authority is established. Yes, they succeeded. With the aid of the Tanzanian People's Defense Forces, the Ugandan exiles were able to dislodge the regime of Idi Amin through military means, which still underlines the fact that I mentioned, that the military remained the ultimate arbiter of political power in Uganda. Cue in Professor Yusuf Lule and Godfrey Lukongwa Binaisa with their brief stints at the presidency. Again, how is Professor Yusuf Lule dethroned? And how is Godfrey Lukongwa Binaisa dethroned? Still by the military men. And a young Museveni then is central in these military maneuvers. The fall of Binaisa follows a reshuffle, an attempted reshuffle involving Yoweri Museveni being moved from the Ministry of Defense to a lighter ministry of, I think, regional cooperation or something like that. So Yoweri Museveni now engages in military maneuvers with other military men and those who believed in the military. And now Binaisa is set aside, is dethroned, and then you end up with the military commission. So the military commission flatters to deceive Ugandans under the leadership of Paulo Muwanga and Vice President or Vice Chairman Yoweri Museveni. They flatter to deceive Ugandans that they are going to lead what democracy. But these are guys that don't believe in democracy. They have just shown you that they were able to dethrone a civilian president, Binaisa, because he did not play politics according to their whims. They wanted politics to be played according to the whims of the military men or those who wield the gun. Yeah? So what I'm trying to build is I'm trying to show you that much as President Museveni has tried to disguise his belief in the military holding power and being the ultimate arbiter of political power, it should not be lost on you that there is no difference between him and the current player who is causing ripples in the country, the son. These two guys share one common belief. The method of execution might differ. And perhaps because Museveni was forged, the Museveni we have today as president was forged from turbulent times, what I have called tough times. While the son has been forged from times when the father flattered to deceive that he's trying to create a democratic state. So those are what I would call the good times in quote. Therefore, the son's exertion of military power differs from the father's exertion of military power. But they are all bred from the same species, they are cut from the same cloth, and they are all believers in the military doctrine. They believe that the military must be the ultimate arbiter of political power in Uganda. So the military commission, headed by Muwanga and deputized by Yoweri Museveni, organizes an election which the strongman Milton Obote manages to rig. And when Obote comes back, he understands very well that the person who controls the gun controls power. So he appoints the man who was heading the military commission, Muwanga, to be his vice president and minister of defense. Yeah? And by the way, in the run-up to the 2026 general election, I pointed out that I was foreseeing President Museveni appointing his son vice president and minister of defense. I am not ruling that out. I am expecting it to happen anytime. It could happen in the next 1 year or in the next 2 years. And when it happens, it will not be new. It will be a reincarnation of the past, where we had Obote getting the guy who he believed was controlling military power, the former chairman of the military commission, to be the vice president and minister of defense. So Obote does that because he believes that he who controls the military controls power. Now, Muwanga, true to that belief by Obote, Muwanga, along the way, having realized that Yoweri Museveni has gone to the bush, he has tried to mobilize a resistance army. Muwanga now realizes that Obote's system has weakened because of the disagreements within the military. So now Muwanga tries to cut a deal with the key protagonists or antagonists within the military. That is how now the Okello brothers come and take power.
Right.
But when the Okello brothers take power, Yoweri Museveni is not convinced that he can come into power through negotiation. He believes that the person who takes power through military superiority is the one that will control politics of Uganda going forward. So Yoweri Museveni, despite the Nairobi peace jokes or the peace talks, as it were, still presses for a military victory. Why? Because he believes that whoever controls the military in Uganda controls power. That is not different from what the son has told us this week. He has told you only his commander-in-chief can summon him. So he's trying to show you that the power vested in the judiciary by the 1995 Constitution
As a sham.
is nothing but hot air. The actual power sits with the person who controls the military. That is what he's showing you. Is he different from the father who discarded the peace jokes? He's not different. They are the same. So General Muhoozi Kainerugaba is the true son of his father. in terms of doctrinal inclination. He is the true son of his father, who believes in military domination, in military superiority. Yeah? So,
Is it that paradoxical to the fact that you said that the president should be sympathized by his fellow generals?
I did not mean to say so in totality.
Yeah.
I was trying to be devil's advocate. Yeah.
Because if he yields all the power, then people were asking him to abandon his son and city. They kind of have a point. Because he still has that power. Once he gets rid of his there's going to be sanity, not just in the country, but within the entire political ecosystem in Uganda.
I can tell you,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can tell you that I did not mean to say that they should be sympathetic to him in totality, but they should contextualize it and understand that certain things are beyond his control. However, as I qualified it at the end, I said, but then we should not forget that what we are thinking might be beyond his control is intertwined and aligned with his selfish beliefs or his selfish interests, for that matter. So therefore, I don't want to absolve him. The buck starts and stops with him. During the course of this week, I have opined in different fora that his original friends, the people that went to school with him, need to sit him down and call him out, call him to order. They have got nothing to lose. If a person who is 85 years or 84 years, like Edward Sekandi, were to call out, say 83 years, if you were to call out the president in private, let them call him in private. They don't need to give us a spectacle out here in the public. They can reach out in private, call him to order, and tell him what is happening is not the best for country. I do not see that happening with the current crop of political sycophants occupying political positions. But the old guard who have since fallen by the wayside, I think they should make one last attempt. I am a believer that everybody needs compassion, but maybe they should make one last attempt to talk him to try and do something. However, that said, like I said, him and the son believe in one thing: military domination. They look at themselves as Bachwezi. However, they forget that the Bachwezi Empire collapsed at some point, and the Bachwezi disappeared from the face of the earth without knowing where they went. So it is not true that the Bachwezi can exercise military domination in perpetuity. And it is also not true that the Chwezi can subdue and subjugate a population in perpetuity. There has to be a certain point where the Chwezi lose control, and a people that have been subdued and subjugated can regain control of the affairs of our polity. So, my brother, militarism that we have today goes back to the colonial times. The people that have taken over have just been colonialists in black skin.
Right.
So they have never allowed us to divorce military rule. President Museveni has had opportunities to allow the constitution to work and be the supreme law. He has missed those opportunities. So we start again. As a people of Uganda, we have got to start again.
Right.
We are going to start this process afresh. We are going to have to build a new constitution. we are going to have to build a new national army. The people of Uganda will have to answer the governance question afresh. We will have to find out, how do we want to be governed? Is this the brand of democracy that we would like to carry forward? Like I said last time, there might be people, I have been reliably informed that our friend, the CDF, might be retaining advisory services of people from communist China and Russia. But then, like I said the other time, you cannot establish North Korea in Uganda today. It's a different ball game here. So these guys had better go back to the drawing board and tender a fresh piece of advice. I don't know if Dr. Nyanzi is now available. I don't want it to be a monotony or of contribution from my side.
I'm enjoying listening to you. I'm really still just listening in because I think the teaching that Egesa is doing is important. So if you still have to speak, I'm now entering my home. I've left the public transport, but I think you're teaching very well. Just keep teaching.
Okay, but you can chip in once you settle in, so I can grab some water. Yeah.
Exactly. So before we actually continue with that conversation, I think the people who are watching us would like to know this guy, this new generation of politicians you're talking about, the ones that General Kahindo Tafile describes as having bankrupts of ideas. If that is something to interrogate itself.
You see,
who is General Mohos? I do have a clip of how this guy is being conceptualized, how it becomes. How he has been trained, how he has entered these spaces, and how he's being perceived with by NTV at least. And of course, there might be some sort of sarcasm happening in some of the reporting, but it will give you a good picture of
omukulembeze w'eggwanga Special Forces Command SFC yali ku bikwekweto ebyenjawulo.
Yeah, so
Muhoozi Kainerugaba ye mutabani w'omukulembeze w'eggwanga lino Yoweri Kaguta Museveni omukulu nga yamuzaala nga 21 Ogwokuna 1974. Ye muduumizi w'eggye ly'eggwanga ly'UP.
I do hear you. Do you want me to play this video or no?
No, you go ahead. You play the video, then I'll come in. Yeah.
Okay.
Muhoozi Kainerugaba ye mutabani w'omukulembeze w'eggwanga lino Yoweri Kaguta Museveni omukulu nga yamuzaala nga 24 Ogwokuna 1974. Ye muduumizi w'eggye ly'eggwanga UPDF yakulirako eggye erikuuma omukulembeze w'eggwanga li Special Forces Command SFC yaliko omuwabuzi wa President ku bikwekweto ebyenjawulo yaduumirako eggye ery'oku ttaka era nga ye ssentebe w'ekisinde ki PLU abangi kye balowooza nti kimutembeeta kufuuka President wa ggwanga lino gye bujja.
I'm not going to comment on that. That's
wandirowoozezza nti obukugu obumusuubirwamu oluvannyuma olw'okuweereza mu bifo ebikulu bwe biti bwandibadde bweyolekera mu bikolwa bye kyokka mwana wattu si bwe kiri. Eyandibadde agoberera amateeka n'ateyingiza mu byabufuzi ng'omuduumizi w'eggye ly'eggwanga ng'etteeka lya UPDF erimufuga bwe lirambika mwana wattu alitunuulira kyamuli. Ono y'omu ku bannayuganda abasinga abagobereza abangi ku mukutu gwa X era emirundi mingi azze agukozesaawo okuyisaako obubaka obusokaasoka, obusima, obusoomooza, obukudaala, obulengezza, oluusi obutiisatiisa abantu mu ngeri ey'olusaagiriro kyokka mwana wattu n'akomekkereza nga baakwata abakutte n'abatulugunyizibwa. Obubaka bwa Muhoozi ku X si bubaka kyokka wabula bumenya akatundu ak'ekikumi mu tteeka erikwata ku buzzi bw'emisango oba penal code.
I'm always willing to provide advice.
Okugeza akawaayiro ak'ekinaana mu tteeka lyerimu omuntu yenna ng'alina ekigendererwa ekyokulumya, okunyiiza, okutiisatiisa, okutulugunya, okutta omuntu, oba okwokya, okumenya oba okwonoona ekintu ky'omulala aba akoze omusango era abonerezebwa n'okusibwa obutaka wansi wa myaka 4. Ebimu ku bino omukulu abikola kyere awatali amukuba ku mukono. Okugeza omwaka oguwedde oluvannyuma lw'okuwambibwako omukuumi wa Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu munna NUP Edward Ssebuufu. Amanyiddwa ennyo nga Eddie Mutwe, omukulu yavaayo n'akakasa nga bwe yali amukuumidde mu kye yayita basement n'ebifaananyi bye ne bifuluma ng'asaliddwako enviiri n'ekirevu nga n'endabika ye eraga ng'eyali atulugunyiziddwa. Emirundi mingi ono singa ogwa mu ttaano ze n'akulaalika okukukwata tewayita nnyingi ng'okwatiddwa, ekireetedde bangi okumusongamu olunwe ku ngeri gy'asusse w'alina okukoma. Takoma ku kubakwata kwokka wabula n'okwewaana avaayo ne yeewaana nga baba akutte batulugunyiziddwa. Okusinga Muhoozi ono azze atiisatiisa baaludda luvuganya baatwalira ddala ng'abalabe b'eggwanga. Muhoozi takoma kuno kwokka azze alomba n'amawanga amalala nga n'ag'okumuliraano tagatalizza. Okugeza mu mwaka gwa 2022 Muhoozi ono yalumba eggwanga lya Kenya bwe yawandiika ku mukutu gwe ogwa X n'alaalika nga ye n'amagye ge bwe baali basobola okulumba eggwanga lino mu bbanga lya wiiki 2 zokka nga balisensebudde. Ono era yeekubira oluuyi bwe yavaayo ne yeewuunya lwatu lwaki yali President Uhuru Kenyatta eyali avudde mu buyinza. Ebigambo by'omukulu ono byajja bannakenya bangi mu mbeera era abamu ne baweereza Uganda ebigambo eby'obusagwa ekyawaliriza kitaawe Yoweri Kaguta Museveni okuvaayo ne yeetondera bannakenya ku lwa mutabani we. Teyakoma ku kwetonda kwokka, Museveni era yakwata mutabani we ono ku nkoona bwe yamuggyako obuduumizi bw'eggye ery'oku ttaka, ekintu ekyasanyusa bannansi b'amawanga gombiriri Uganda ne Kenya. Kyokka baba bakyasagambiza ate Muhoozi n'akuzibwa nga waakayitambale n'afuulibwa jeneraali ajjudde, ekyaleetera abasinga okulowooza nti kitaawe yennyini yamumeza ebiwawaatiro okubuuka okusukkawo. Nga wayise ebbanga lya mwaka nga gumu nga Museveni yeetondedde eggwanga lya Kenya ku lwa mutabani we, yayongera bwongezi okumugonnomolako ebitiibwa bwe yamulonda okuduumira eggye ly'eggwanga okutuuka olwaleero. Shamim Naiga, NTV, Akawungeezi.
That expert is from NTV. Brother Egesa, your thoughts, I mean, some of the things you have talked about have already have also been shared in this expert. But your thoughts regarding how people perceive this journal and how Ugandans should prepare for what is coming.
First of all, they have interrogated how he became a key player in the military. Yeah.
Yeah.
For you to understand the military question in Uganda's politics, as I have said, it predates independence. Yeah. Who was the first president of Uganda?
Mutesa 1. Mutesa 2. Mutesa 2.
No, what was his full name and title?
Edward Mutesa 2, the Kabaka of Uganda.
You are forgetting that he was a captain in the army.
He was a captain, yeah. But he wasn't a Ugandan captain. He was a captain in the arm of the British Army.
Yeah, because before independence, you had the King's African Rifles. Yeah,
indeed. But
my grandfather served in the King's African Rifles.
Right.
So what today? Many of the royals send their crown princes to Sandhurst also to serve in the military. Even the king of Toro today has gone for military training, isn't it? Eh?
Right.
Eh? So it is.
What's his rank?
Eh?
What's the rank of the?
No, I'm not so sure at what point he completed his training at Sandhurst, but I remember when he left. So I will need to check to know at what point he completed and left. But that is in our psyche, that the powerful feel empty without military credentials. You can see that the son of Muhoozi Kainerugaba is also in Sandhurst as we talk today.
Right.
Eh? So from the first generation of Yoweri Museveni to the generation of Muhoozi Kainerugaba to the generation of Museveni's grandson, they are all believing that their destiny is to be military generals, and for them to retain power, they must have the best military credentials. As I was explaining the difference between Yoweri Museveni and Muhoozi Kainerugaba is not in their doctrine that they believe in. The difference is in the circumstances that made them the soldiers they are. Museveni is a general out of experience, not out of military academy.
Right.
Muhoozi is a military academy general. Yeah.
Right.
So that could explain the strategic, the difference in strategic approaches of the two. But these two people believe in the same thing. I think the father, he must have been giving a pep talk to the son all throughout his life, telling him, without military power, you are nothing.
Right.
This is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm reading from the developments that have taken place during Museveni's time and what we are seeing now as we look into the transition from, we look into a post-Museveni Uganda. He's trying to leave us with a son who also believes that without military power, you are nothing.
Let us go back to the events that happened this week. And as we go back to those events, I want us to first anchor ourselves in a conversation that Salongo Elias Lukwago, the former Lord Mayor, shared with the Radical New Bar.
Our profession is under threat.
Yeah, just here.
Our noble profession is under threat. I've never been convicted by any other civilian court. The only conviction I carry is that of the General Court Martial, and it haunts me. You and members of the bar are not safe either. It's the reason, Mr. President, we ask for the intervention of the bar to ensure that there is fair hearing. Mr. President, we do invite the Radical New Bar to bang the tables for the rule of law to prevail.
Lord Mayor gives a similar message in Uganda, shares a similar message in Uganda. I'm going to share that as well.
Abamu batiisiddwa abalala bakuuye. Kooti ne banne bonna, chairman ne banne batutunuulira nga ffe abatalina mugaso. Ensonga zonna ze tuteekayo ez'amateeka ziziimuulwa buziimuulwa. Mr. President, nze njogedde ne ba senior lawyers bangi nnyo nga bagamba nti eyo tetukyadda, ffe eyo tetukyadda. Mr. President, nange nali omu ku abo abaali bateekeza decision nga nti naye kati kino bwe kyatuuka notugamba nti nunno katugende tuteekewo olutalo olulaba nti wabeerawo obwenkanya.
Right. I think I guess has jumped off because of connectivity, but Dr. Stella, welcome back on this conversation. Your thoughts on what Egesa has shared so far, but also what your thoughts are regarding Lukwago's message here before he got into the current predicament that he's navigating.
Right.
Welcome
Thank you.
aboard.
Thank you very much. I suppose I've been listening in as I traveled back from wherever I was, and I was listening to I guess, running through both recent but also, colonial history of militarization in Uganda, and then the post-independence militarization and how the military seems to have been responsible for change of power. Power in Uganda lies very much in the hands of the military. And I think I agree to a large extent with what Mukulu Egesa has said. And I suppose for me, in response, I had some questions, particularly when, as a person who is interested very much in the role of everyday citizens, Ugandans, what excited me, drawing from the history that Egesa elaborately, talked about, touching this and that, was the point he made about Ugandans must now rebuild. Ugandans must now rebuild our constitution. Ugandans must now take back our country and where we are going. The history is important for me as long as it allows us to understand. It gives us clarity about what's happening in the present. And I think one of the assurances we have is, Tewali Chipia, we've been here before. Yeah. And that reassurance is very good, especially because there's a lot of fear in the country. Many people don't know how we overcame the previous military takeovers of the country. Yeah. And I think while the history is important and it matters in terms of grounding us within our Ugandan reality, for me, it also gives me hope because we've been here before. How did we get out of where we are, right? So in terms of my quick responses, I was struck by the tiger. I would have wanted to learn a bit more about the metaphor of this tiger man. You remind me what the name was. How do we get hold of tigers with little tigers who have become big tigers? There's a whole litany of tigers. The baby tigers are now big enough to torment the country. Yeah. And I think perhaps a little bit different to what we had. We haven't been exactly here before, where we've seen the rise to power of the new tiger, a challenger to the old tiger. So we've been with many old tiger men, macho military big boys. Right now, this sort of father to son, blatant takeover. I don't think we've been here before, but maybe I'm wrong. So in terms then of responding to the question around ideological bankruptcy that Mukuluka Hindo Tafire touched on, I think for me, that is part of the reality of Uganda, that those who sit with, okay, so just to step back, to step back a little bit, I think when you invited us to discuss rule of law, I was looking forward to what the two lawyers on the announced panel were going to say, because for me, one of the hardest questions is when the military regime and the military order clashes with the rule of law and constitutionalism, which is where we are. What do we do, especially if the constitutional order, the rule of law, that particular system, which we have been hypnotized to believe is the order of the day, when it clashes and it doesn't work for us, when we see it crumbling before our very eyes, how are we prepared as citizens, as everyday non-military, whether we are professional or farmers, whether we are housewives or businessmen, how do we engage at that? This is where we are, the point at which militarism, its teeth are digging and biting chunks away of rule of law. How do we engage? And I think for me, in terms of resistance and moving forward, moving the conversation beyond the fear that paralyzes people, that's one question. And I was thinking ideological teaching, ideological assessment, ideological, empowering community building. hasn't been happening in Uganda for a long time, whether it's among the elite. That is why we therefore see the hierarchy that is presented for us as the new PLU Central Committee, that there are many educated people, many of who should be champions of rule of law, but they are serving the military takeover of Uganda. So what do we need as people? What do the elite need? How do we refocus our ideological orientation as people? What is our ideology as Ugandans, whether we are pro Muhoozi or not? What ideological substance do we have right now that prepares us to interface with the reality that's happening, the reality that's rolling right before our eyes? Because all of us, not just Muhoozi's sycophants, are ideologically bankrupt as a people. All of us, the elite, the lawyers, that is why former Attorney General can sit at the feet of military takeover of rule of law. All those elite working with Muhoozi, something is happening. And so my question then, in terms of, again, going forward, is what do we do? Yet we are a malnourished army trying to speak, actually a malnourished civilian population trying to address ourselves to the military takeover of rule of law. How prepared are we? And I think that then the other caution about resist the sin of silence becomes important. What do we speak in moments like this? The silencing that I see around, the silencing that we witness, the silencing among our political cadre, the silencing in parliament, the legislature, the silencing of the judiciary, the silencing of the masses, the silencing of the media. There are just a few people who are standing up to speak. How do we speak back to the current crisis? It's a crisis that we have. If we don't even know what to speak, tugambe chi, tuogere chi? And I think that is part of what is manifesting as fear. The fear for some people is because njogere chi, amateka tegakola. How does one challenge abe muntu? To call for a re-establishment and a reclaiming of our constitutional order is to make a particular stance. When Negesa says Ugandans must now arise and take back our constitution, reinstitute constitutionalism, what does it take for us to do that? And I think for me that these are some of the difficult questions, especially when engaging as a civilian. The military takeover of rule of law, I'm very glad none of us sat here talking about rule of law, pretending there is rule of law, pretending about, we now are in a military jungle where if the military man says jump, we just say, we don't even ask how high, he forces us to jump. And maybe the last point I wanted to, so mine is really questions. In terms of what prophet, he's now a prophet, Prophet Lukwago prophesied about what we are witnessing among the legal fraternity of lawyers, of state prosecutors, the whole DPP faction of judges, and magistrates, the whole JLOS, justice law and order sector is under siege. And the prophet Lukwago prophesied, and it's come to pass. He was appealing to lawyers, all these things he talked about, the takeover, the stampeding, the threatening, the harassment, the humiliation of the legal profession has rolled out perfectly, uninterrupted before our eyes, and he's now in prison. And I think for me, again, my question would be, as Ugandans, if the vanguards, the champions, the ambassadors of rule of law seem powerless, they seem totally powerless in the face of this military tiger, what answers do we have for ourselves as people? And I think I pose these questions to Egesa because perhaps there may already be clarity around how other citizens in other national contexts or other historical contexts have dealt with this military takeover of rule of law. I think what scares me about last week's events also excites me. It excites me because there's no longer pretense. Right?
Yeah.
What also excites me is part of what makes me fear, the trepidation that I have, is because we are not prepared. We are not prepared as Ugandans to say, okay, this is going to be my role. I saw the reorganization of, for example, when Muhoozi threatened to close New Vision, no, not New Vision,
NTV
and Daily Monitor. What was the comeback? I celebrate the standpoint of NTV. They have continued. So National Media Group has continued to do its work. But who else? Where else? And so I guess for me, again, the question that I have as we all turned our heads towards the Twitter sphere and looked at Muhoozi's X is, what were the alternative voices against his propaganda, spewed propaganda and military violence displayed full scale, unashamed, no hesitation before our eyes and before our internet spaces? How were we prepared for a counter response? How are we preparing for a counter response? And my question is important because if we don't begin to realize it's not a time to fear, it's a time to say, hey, yachitulaze, tachekwese, nafe, tukoze chino na chino na chino. He's showing us unashamedly what he is prepared to do, that is going to hit the strongest among us, is going to take the people's mayor away from us. What is our response as Ugandans? And so I suppose for me, the questions are important because if we ask right, then we begin to get proper responses. So before we get to that moment where Egesa said, hey, now Ugandans have to rebuild our constitution. We have to rebuild our rule of law systems. We have to rebuild all of this. We are in that moment where the leopard man, the tiger man, the militant brute is totally trying to dig his teeth into a rule of law, into a public life, into our everyday life, on our TV screens or in our newspapers. Everybody is whispering, Muhoozi, Muhoozi, Muhoozi. I saw the political parties in the opposition holding space together. But what does it mean if we're just beginning to have conversations across board? We're just beginning. I heard some religious leaders speaking back, but we're just starting. I have seen the work of the Law Society. We're just starting. He seems to be millions ahead of us because he's using those ideologically bankrupt elite. It's not idiots working with Muhoozi. Some of the best brains in Uganda are sitting at the feet of Muhoozi, as he and holding his hands as he rolls out his military takeover. So mine are really questions in this moment of dissipation, of takeover, of capture, of erasure, of brutal rape of rule of law, of constitutionalism, of civilian rule even. How are we preparing ourselves for a clapback, for resistance, for a challenge? Or are we just going to keep talking about the pain, the brutality, the audacity, how mighty the military brute has risen, without thinking through comeback, resistance, preparation, even if it's education and conversations and calling people away from fear? What is the work that needs to be done? One, to raise resistance, but two, to put up a proper challenge. How do we put up a proper challenge in this moment? and not become the late Nobo Mayombo, and not become the imprisoned Prophet Lukwago, and not become the next victim of military might, because Muhoozi Yazze full guns blazing, unashamed. He even signs, yes, it is me. I am the one who has humiliated your champion of rule of law. So in terms of organizing, in terms of organizing thought, in terms of ideological reorientation, in terms of reminding ourselves of the history, in terms of doing the work that must be done, so that when he meets, when the rubber meets the tarmac, that we're also biting back. We're not just bending over and yielding, you know? Those for me are the critical questions, because Uganda belongs to all of us and we're taking it back. We are going to resist, but how are we going to resist? How are we preparing others? Because for me, the history is not good enough if it stops at just being historical lessons, lessons from history. We have to think through the moment in ways that help us reshape, reclaim our future. So I haven't really responded to maybe perhaps the bigger questions, because I'm questioning, but I really enjoyed the history lessons, the reminding us of where militarism has taken over almost all forms of public space, of public life, of the contract with Ugandan masses. I would want us to use that history to think through right now. How are we preparing? How are we preparing, one, individually, but also collectively, whether professionally, because everything seems to be attacked. And then how are we preparing resistance beyond today, when Muzei dies, when Muhoozi takes over, when he has instilled the new leader of opposition, because it sounds like he's going to take over parliament, and where NUP is leader of opposition, perhaps the plan and strategy is to instill PLU as the opposition in parliament and therefore the leader of opposition. So what he could have presented as rhetorical buffoonery could actually be their plan to ensure that they are second within parliament. Who knows? But I suppose for me, over and beyond what the enemy is doing to Uganda and Ugandans, my questions around that I don't have answers for is, what are Ugandans doing? What are we doing as Ugandans to respond? Maybe not respond, even to
push back.
How are we thinking through to resistance? Resistance. That's the question.
So these are excellent questions, Dr. Stella. Thank you so much for that submission. Before I call back Igisa to interrogate some of those questions that you have posed yourself, I guess I have another video that I can share about what opposition members or other citizens are discussing about Lukwago and how to respond really to the young tiger. As
tusaako ekiwandiiko bakuntumi kikuwa obuvunaanyizibwa okujja mu maaso ga kkooti ne bakusoyasoya ebibuuzo. Ekyo kyekitiisa mutabani w'omukulu w'eggwanga ow'amaanyi ekyenkanidde awo okuyimirira bamubuuza ebibuuzo bamusoyesoye kyekimutiisa. Kati oba ekisanyi kiyinza okukutiisa olwo omusota gw'otootye. Olwaleero mwami Kayine Lugaba General Muhoozi ateeka okukitegeera nti okukulembera eggwanga si kintu kyangu. Bw'obeera nga okwogera obwogezi tugenda kusavinga ekiwandiiko bakuntumi kiyinza okukutiisa n'okukwata omutume bw'otyo kikulaga levo kikwoli mu bukulembeze. Naddala nga kitaawo taliiwo akukakasaawo n'amagye n'emmundu. Naye twagala kubategeeza kino, mpaawo kigenda kututiisa. Abantu abatalina nkizi bajja kutusanga nga weetuli tuli gumite. Baali balowooza nti bajja kukwata Besigye n'Obedi Lutalema bateeke mu makomera tubulweko obutuuliro, tubulweko abawonde weetuli ate ffe tuwondera bali. Basobola okugamba nti bakutte Lukwago bamutiisetiise, oyo bamukwatakwata dda, eyo byonna byonna ebimutuukamu kakata tewaliwo kipya mu bulamu bwe. Era basobola okugamba nti nno bwe banakwana Lukwago tewajja kubeerawo process server mulala wali, era weetuli bwe banabeera nga omulimu ogwo bagutuwadde, era wakiri tunaavuga bodaboda tutuuka ku kitebe gye tunaamusanga. Tebayinza gamba nti nno bagenda kubatta ate munange process server wa kooti buli anajja gwonotta, kiyinza obutasoboka. Naye olunatta Wambwa lusooka muziba nnyindo, tomanya nti eno emmanduso ey'Abannayuganda kwe banaalabira ate ne basituka buto. Njagala okukoowoola ba freedom fighters baffe mwenna, njagala okubakoowoola mmwe ba activists, njagala okukoowoola Uganda Law Society, njagala okukoowoola kooti, Justice Baguma, eno order yiyo. Era bw'obeera ng'osobola nga bw'obadde okola bulijjo kikukwatako okulaba nga order gwe wennyini ne ba court server bazituusa eri Muhoozi Kayine Lugaba ne banne. Njagala okukoowoola Chief Justice kubanga zino order zammwe ze bayisaamu olugaayi. Njagala okukoowoola President Museveni bwadde ne ligambibwako nnyini lyo bw'abeera nga mutabani we yeyasindise bano okusobola okutangira okumutuusako bakuntumi. Gw'oswala wadde waswalaswaladde naye gw'oswala kubanga kintu kiri mu makaago, kiri mu busobozi bwo okugamba ku mutabani si bwe batyo bakola. Nze nzijukira Mwami Museveni yakkiriza ne bamutuusaako ebiwandiiko ng'avunaaniddwa okubba obululu. Ye yennyini newankubadde nga yali yabubba naye teyatya kurisiivinga biwandiiko ng'ebyo, era teyalina namundu. Mutabani wo okumutuusaako ekiwandiiko kitestinga butya bw'omugulumiinze okukwata eggwanga nga bwe mwetegeka. N'olwekyo bwadde ne ligambibwako nnyini lyo gw'osobola commander in chief okugamba CDFO nti kimukola si kituufu. After all era gwe wagamba nti waliwo oboowa obukulembeze mu magye nga tasobola kumuvinga na unity y'amagye ey'abajaasi 10. Kaakati bano basusse mu 10, kitegeeza nti mutabani wo obwo buyinza yabulina. Bwadde ne ligambibwako nnyini lyo gamba ku mutabani wo omukulembeze w'ekibiina kino Ssaalongo Erias Lukwago ate nga ye looya wa Dr. Besigye bamuzze mu maka ge batwale ebiwandiiko byabwe era balabike mu kooti. Nze nali ndabyeko President Museveni ng'agamba Professor Gilbert Bukenya alabike mu kakiiko ka Parliament. Naye nga mu kiseera ekyo Professor Gilbert Bukenya yali Vice President era n'alabika. Tosobola kuŋŋamba nti CDF asinga namba 2. Mutabani wo bw'oba ng'omwekakasa mugambe afeesinge kooti yeewozeeko ku bimuvunaanibwa, ategeere nti okufumba si kwoto, ategeere nti abayimirira mu kaguli basajja nnyo. Bw'abeera nga musajja naye yeerage nti alina obusobozi obwo. Gamba mutabani wo si kyekyo ekiseera eky'okwonoona eggwanga lyaffe n'okutyoboola eddembe ly'obuntu ery'obwebange bwe lityo. Guluma yaguzza Museveni si gwaza omusango mutabani wo ate w'amaanyi alina amagye asobola n'okumuvinga turupusi kooti temuliimu bamagye bamundu.
Well. We've heard what Dr. Lulume has said. Very strong words for Muhoozi Kayine Lugaba, but also very strong appeals to the president of Uganda, of course, appeals to Justice Baguma, appeals to the Chief Justice. I wonder what your thoughts are, Mr. Egesa, as you continue to paint us a picture of what is really happening in Uganda. Do you think the appeals that these folks are doing to President Museveni have any kind of impact to the conversation that is transpiring? Question number 2 is Muhoozi Kayine Lugaba. Do you think to use Ugandan's word, do you think Muhoozi Kainerugaba is gumite in the absence of his father? In the absence of his father.
I like that one.
It
But
sounds funny,
but
but
I've actually answered that question in different fora. I have said
yeah.
he's not gumite in the absence of his father because of the circumstances that have created the military general that he is. And I have even repeated it tonight when I said he is an academy general, while Yoweri Museveni was a circumstantial general whose military training was experiential and rather than scripted. So Muhoozi Kainerugaba is a general who is formed out of scripted training. They cannot therefore be the same. So that's why you see that Yoweri Museveni translates his military leanings into political strategy to guarantee his political survival. Now, I really want to answer some of the questions that Dr. Nyanzi has raised. But before going there, I want to start from this very video which you have played and the question you've asked me. What we are missing, actually, in discussing gunmen and discussing militarism and then the absence of rule of law, we are missing a strategic masterstroke by Dr. Besige's team. You see, because of our human element, we are more concerned by the abduction of Lord Mayor Elias Lukwago. But the strategic masterstroke there was them pushing the court, which senior counsel Semakade called banging the table, in pushing the court to insist that Muhoozi Kainerugaba must appear in court. That was a masterstroke. Why? It short-circuited the entire game plan of Yoweri Museveni and Muhoozi Kainerugaba. It has exposed them. The abduction of Elias Lukwago is a panicky move because it had not been planned for. I am aware that the plan was to essentially arrest the entire top brass of PFF and charge them with the offense they have charged Lukwago. So when he wants Semuju that I will come for you, that was already scripted. And people who know what is happening in the corridors of power will know that that was already scripted, that Semuju will be called, taken in, you'll go for Salam Musumba, go for the entire top brass of PFF because their political mentor, Kiza Besigye, is being charged with treason. So you believe that he convened the meetings. You remember we had the Kisumu 36? You have Samuel Makoha now behind bars. So it's not new that we are aware that they were going to go for the entire top brass of the PFF. But now their actions were forced by the Lukwago Martha Karua-led legal team pushing the court to compel Muhoozi to appear. And now Muhoozi, the bully, could not imagine that a court in Uganda would summon him. So when the court summons him, so he does not act according to a strategic blueprint. He makes a panicky move, to pick Lukwago. Why is he doing that? And this could partly answer some of the questions that Dr. Nyanzi has asked. He's doing that because in the DNA or in the mind of a military man, in Uganda, that I'm talking about a military man in Uganda's context, they think that the rule of law is a walking stick. What comes first is control of military power, control of the gun. The rule of law is viewed as a military stick because you use it when you are weak to rely on your primary source of energy to walk the political journey. The primary source of energy being militarism, the military. So when you find that you can now conveniently discard the walking stick, you resort to your primary source of energy. So he was stick, just like his father. By the way, like I have argued this evening, his father is not any different. His father relied on a walking stick for some time until times came to test his beliefs and what he's made of. 2017 Tojikwatako moment came our way. He realized that a Speaker of Parliament can actually play games with the opposition and kill debate that the mob wants to push through. So the moment he discovered that that risk was always going to be there, that Rebecca Kadaga, seeing the mood in the country, was trying to, to engage in some kind of hide and seek, while these people wanted to expedite this process very fast and get done with it. He deployed the military to capture parliament. So which shows you that he abandoned the walking stick and went back to the primary source of power because he felt that his very existence is now threatened. His political existence was under threat by relying on the walking stick. So in their world, military power, raw military power versus rule of law, in their world, raw military power is in position 1 and rule of law is in position 2. Now, that is how they think. It is important for us to understand how they think. I want to move to the present day situation where we are. I have tried, I think I mentioned it last time to Dr. Nyanzi. I try as much as possible to avoid discussing the strategy that we are thinking about in this forum. But I'll point out a few things in general terms without going into the nitty-gritties. Given where we are right now, there are 3 things you could think about. The first one, do we have a charismatic public face to face Muhoozi Kainerugaba? Or are we saying we are going to leave him in the field, in the ring alone, using Moses Golora tactics or Muhammad Ali tactics of talking tough to scare away the would-be contenders? Yeah? So is that what we are settling for? I don't think that will be tenable. Nature has a vacuum. The current political class, for example, our brother Robert Chagulanyi, he engaged in political deceit. He played according to President Museveni's narrative. He played according to President Museveni's script. He presented himself for stupid elections. And he lost the leadership of the masses. Those of us who were bold enough to call him out were attacked. But now you can see that Robert Chagulanyi, whether in the country or in exile, does not have the pulse of the nation. He cannot rally the nation against the actions of General Muhoozi Kainerugaba. So which therefore means a new face has to emerge. So as night follows day, a new face is going to emerge. And that new face is going to take on Muhoozi Kainerugaba eyeball to eyeball. Like in our Luya tradition, we say, mundu hu mundu. Muhoozi has to be taken on. And as sure as night follows day, somebody is going to take him on. He will not be left as a village bully to threaten anybody, everybody, and anybody who comes up. So that's the first thing in countering. What are we going to do? I'm trying to answer the question that Dr. Stella Nyanzi asked. on what are we going to do. So the first thing is we are trying to see how we come up with that public face. And that public face should not be another Chagulanyi. It should be somebody who can listen to strategists. It should be somebody who listens to a think tank. People who can sit them down and say, look, you can't move like this. The people who understand the enemy. The people who know that we must infiltrate the enemy. The people who know that you cannot just rely on raw power of rhetoric and you imagine that you are going to defeat a gunman. You defeat a gunman by playing a game that is higher than the game he's playing. You must be having a strong team, a strong think tank. You must have a sound strategy. So we need that kind of person. It's not that we don't know where they are. We are looking around. We are engaging. We are weighing. We are trying to see who fits the bill so that that person can now be introduced and presented. So the days of Muhoozi Kainerugaba playing in the ring alone are numbered. That is the first thing. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I hear you.
Number two, the tension that we see in the country now emanates from the usage of the X platform by Muhoozi Kainerugaba. So the question then is, can we deplatform him? Yes, we can. There are very many ways of deplatforming him from X. But if you deplatform him, it is a double-edged sword. Why do I call it a double-edged sword? On the one part, you will take out the channel that he uses to threaten people. However, you will not have taken out that the fact that he can use raw military power to abduct people, and those people now will go unaccounted for. At least now he comes out and he takes responsibility. Shamelessly claims that I have picked the fool. I have done this, I have done that. So at least we have a trail. He's leaving a trail. So even if the tables were to turn today or tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, and you have a new dispensation in town, and then they subject General MK to a public justice process, like the one they subjected Okello to. Like the late Paul Kafero used to say, no mutagula muzabwenkanya. I don't know if you get me, my brother.
Yes.
Yeah. When Kafero was narrating the story of Siroganga in his song, Dipo Nazikala, he said that so if Muhoozi Kainerugaba was to be subjected to a justice system in the public forum, even young children will say he deserves it because he did things with absolute impunity.
Right.
So now, which means that amongst the things we are thinking of doing, deplatforming him from social media, we have got to know that it is a double-edged sword. It has its advantages, but the disadvantages in the present situation might outweigh the advantages. That is how I look at it. So I want to leave it at that. Whatever people are doing or what, I don't want to disclose. The third thing is isolation. Today, General Muhoozi seems to be in an echo chamber. In that echo chamber, there is no voice of dissent. There is no voice of reason. The would-be voices of reason have either kept quiet or have chosen to use warped logic when responding to his actions. They decide to clap to every action he takes, however funny and unreasonable it is. They are not his true friends. Because a true friend will tell you that I don't think this is proper. I don't think you should move this way. By the time I have been following the history of Yoweri Museveni, I have followed his history. Even when he came out of the bush in 1986 and he was forming new government, there are people who would still come and call him out amongst his contemporaries. In private, they would call him out. Even in his private life, they would call him out and say, this is not proper. You've got to do something. You've heard of people like Zimula Mugwanya. These people used to call him out and force his hand to do certain things differently. Does Muhoozi Kainerugaba have those kind of people? The answer is no. That's why I'm saying his inner circle has done a disservice, not to the country first, but to him as a person first. By now, they would have invited him and challenged him to shoot all of them and say, you know what? All of us here, take us to the basement. We are your friends. We are members of your central committee. Take us to the basement. When he says no, then they say, listen to us. What you are doing is detrimental to your own aspirations. I personally wouldn't have a problem with a President Muhoozi Kainerugaba that goes through due process to ascend to that throne. But I have a problem to a Muhoozi Kainerugaba that wants to take the presidency through impunity and the anarchy. I have a problem. I will oppose that with every drop of my blood. I would have no problem with a President Muhoozi Kainerugaba that does political machinations, captures the NRM, reforms it, fights corruption. I have no problem. But I have a big problem with a President Muhoozi Kainerugaba that tries to reincarnate the caricature of Idi Amin that his father has told us all this time. I have a big problem with it. I am opposed to it. And I speak my mind. So for me, that's the thing, that his closest friends have done a disservice to him bigger than they have done to the nation. Because in any case, they don't owe the nation advisory service to one man. But they have done a very big disservice to him as a person. It is high time they wake up. Some of them are on this podcast. They are watching this stream. Some of his close friends, some of the members of the Central Committee of the PLU are watching. And I want to implore them, I want to beseech you to rediscover your conscience. Sit down, your man. Talk some sense into him. At sometime this week, I did mention about the kind of leaders that I deduced from reading the book of Leadership and Strategy. But before I delve into those categories of leaders, there's one thing that we need to always keep reminding ourselves about, which is that governments are criminal enterprises by design and operation. Granted. But even when one criminal group must dominate other criminal groups, it can only do so by creating a semblance of stability, by establishing a rule of law in which even members of the criminal gang are not above the law. That is how the criminal enterprise called a state, the criminal enterprise that is run by a government, remains relevant in a polity. So it is, you see, even countries like Haiti that have been run by gangs, it will not go on forever. You can see Somalia having gone through anarchy from 1991. the times of Farah I did, up to date, Somalians are fatigued. People have lived in exile. They are fatigued. They are tired. So they still yearn for that all-powerful criminal enterprise that will reinstate order and guarantee them some peace. So at the end of the day, even if you want to come and rule through anarchy, even if you want to come and use force to capture power, you must understand that the only thing that will keep you in that power is establishing a social contract with the people. Even criminal gangs establish social contracts with the people. So if you don't establish a social contract with the people and you lack legitimacy, you will be run out of town by another criminal gang. And the cycle will be endless. It will never end. Why? Because I have always said, nobody enjoys a monopoly of bad manners. Nobody enjoys a monopoly of violence. Nobody. So just as you might be feeling that you have the leverage, at a certain point in time, somebody else is going to play the cards better than you. Somebody else is going to pull the rug from under your feet. Case in point, I don't think he expected that by keeping Dr. Kizza Besigye in court, even after the Supreme Court ruling on court-martial operations as being illegal, I don't think at the time he thought of transferring Dr. Kizza Besigye to civilian courts and to civil prison and then keeping him there. I don't think he imagined that he will be pushed, the courts will be pushed to summon him. That should communicate something to him and his handlers, his advisors, that somebody is out there moving the pieces to outmaneuver you. So nobody enjoys a monopoly of violence. Nobody enjoys a monopoly of bad manners. Nobody enjoys a monopoly of impunity. That is why you see that Idi Amin was driven out. Having a law against foreign interference is not the same as absence of foreign interference. We can have a law protecting our sovereignty. It does not mean that there are no powers that want to topple the regime in Kampala. And if the interests of these powers will align with the interests of the Ugandans that are not happy with the method you want to use to ascend to power, then you will be driven out of town. You will be run out of town. So we need to face reality. So when someone is in an echo chamber and there can be no voices of reason coming out of that echo chamber, the voices of reason will come from outside. Like us, we are outside. And we are the ones actually now telling him the things his friends are supposed to tell him. The things that we are saying in such a forum are the things that the members of the Central Committee of PLU should have been telling General Muhoozi Kainerugaba. I keep repeating, nobody enjoys a monopoly over bad manners. Nobody enjoys a monopoly over violence. So, if I'm going to go back to the question, one of the other questions that Dr. Stellanyans asked, still again about the rule of law. I've already said that the only way a government can establish and maintain a social contract and have some kind of tranquility in a country is by making sure that the rule of law, is upheld. The rule of law is upheld. So even the PLU people that are thinking that nobody can summon their supremo must not be oblivious to this fact. Their supremo will only succeed to lead Uganda if he is going to play by the rule of law. He must go back and look at the tricks used by his dad at the very beginning to try and co-opt people bring people to the eating table. When he comes, then he starts saying, "Oh, Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament." The man doesn't even respect these people, but he comes and then he starts saying, "Oh, Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament." He goes through the drill, but he doesn't respect them. I want to bring back the issue of gunmen. I want to call them gunmen now. The issue of gunmen thinking that the rule of law is a walking stick they can conveniently use and they can run away from it. Take an example of General Kale Kaihura, now retired. At the height of his impunity, he was summoned to the courts. I think one of the courts where he was summoned was Makindye Magistrates Court. So he mobilized supporters, and I actually thought that MK was going to do the same thing. He mobilized supporters to move to the premises of the court and scare the officers of court, so that the sitting does not take place. The same Kale Kaihura, when he was picked up and taken to a military prison in Makindye, a stone throw away from the same court premises where he took his vigilantes, he picked a phone and called Caleb Alaka and Ocheng, the same lawyers that had represented ADF Supremo Jamil Mukulu. That is the irony. That is the irony. So he sought refuge from the lawyers of Jamil Mukulu, the ADF Supremo. So
very interesting.
So the rule of law, much as we can always bash it here and there, like I said, politicians tend to think that the rule of law, that law is made for the politician and not the other way around. The rule of law becomes your last line of defense when another bully steps into the kraal. Like I said, if something was to happen today and Mosca Nerugaba is on the ropes and he's supposed to defend himself, he will also start pleading for lawyers to defend him. He will turn to the rule of law.
Right.
You get?
Yeah.
So there are lawyers surrounding him. He has appointed both the Right Honorable as his special envoy to Parliament, and Thomas Tayewa. These are lawyers. For God's sake, they should call the man in private and tell him that the law is bad, but it is your last line of defense.
Instead, they just thanked him.
Yeah, instead they just thanked him. Instead of telling him, respect our offices, respect my office as speaker. I am number 3 in the country. You might be the son of the president. And by the way, I don't even know whether the speaker knows that the president is not supposed to be his boss. He could be the boss in the political party for mobilization of votes, yes. But he shouldn't be his boss. This one is a leader of an arm of government. The arm of government that represents the people. So these people are lawyers and they are not telling this man the truth. Instead, they are clapping at the jokes which are not funny. They should tell the man the truth, that look, the rule of law is ultimately going to be your last line of defense when you take power or when you fail to take power and the enemies are going after you. Chirewa Chiwanuka, a former attorney general. You know, when Isaac used
I don't know if we have lost Egesa, but he was on a point where he was interrogating Advocate Isaac Semakade's warning to Ugandans regarding the then newly appointed Attorney General of Uganda, Chiriowa Chiwanuka, who is also now a member of PLU and I believe the Vice President of Buganda region on PLU. Dr. Stella, your thoughts as the conversation continues?
I mean, it's a really interesting conversation for me because, you know, again, just responding to what has transpired. I mean, I guess is back. I don't know if he wants to continue on the Chiriowa, the KK point.
Yeah. No, I was saying that Isaac used to say Chiriowa is a charlatan, and I thought at first that he was being tough to the guy, but honestly, you are a former Attorney General who has now been put in the defense docket, and he's supposed to, among other things, supervise the CDF. Because the Minister of Defense has UPDF as like 90%.
Is it the internet or is it, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like he's buffering.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just again to respond to what I guess I said. I mean, I think for me that the point around Dr. Besige's teams, I think he called it a master stroke. He keeps talking about it, and I think for me, at the very end of the day, I agree with Egesa that pushing Justice Baguma to issue summons for Muhoozi Kainerugaba was an important move. Now, whether Muhoozi resorts to the military and the intimidation we saw, the response he gave, he intimidated Lukwago or not, one thing remains, that a process was set in motion. A judicial process was set in motion. Muhoozi was summoned to give a response about the Enforcement of Human Rights Act and how during Kizza Besige's abduction and rendition back to Uganda, how his human rights were violated, as well as the threats about hanging him. It doesn't matter how many military men take Lukwago and all of Kizza Besige's legal team to the basement, and they torture them and they humiliate them. That process is still in motion. So right. I suppose the point that Egesa is making about rule of law will eventually trump whatever military cards Muhoozi pulls is made very clear that even tomorrow, Baguma, you know, what should have happened, the serving to Muhoozi should have happened, and on the 30th, a date was fixed for Muhoozi to come and interface with the judge about what happened, right? So this idea of the walking stick for me is an important idea, but it doesn't upset the judicial processes. It doesn't take away, you know, Muhoozi can put Medad Segona into Pampas, put all the lawyers on the team in the basement, embarrass all of them, degrade all of them, charge all of them with misprision of treason, you know, get all these trumped up charges against the whole legal team. But this thing that was done, and I think in terms of asking for innovative, creative forms of resistance, these are some of the things that we need. So it takes me to my second response to your video to Lulume, Dr. Lulume, of calling the troops, calling the freedom fighters, calling what and calling what, calling us to what? Okay? I'm not saying tell us what we must do. Don't come and talk about strategy. That's insider the people who think and plan, the strategists, the tacticians, the thinkers must sit in the think tank space. But for us everyday Ugandans, you're calling us to come and do what? When PFF gathers all the political party leaders in a space and they summon us, everybody rise up and do what? In the current dispensation, where military might wants to show that it's going to topple actually it does. They shoot us, they abduct us, they disappear us. These things are happening and there's fear. When we are summoned to rise up, what are we being summoned to rise up and do? Okay, because the sort of things that happened with Baguma and forced him, compelled him, made him birth these summons to Muhoozi can be done by a select few of elite professionals like the lawyers. Okay. Now, when the masses are summoned, mutuita kolachi, and I think for me that question still remains, because not all of us are going to participate in the sort of professional, very technical components of pushing creative forms of resistance that speak in ways that make the military man panic. Now, was it panic? And that question for me was Muhoozi's response panic? I'm not sure it was panic. Perhaps his group of tacticians, which some of us assume doesn't exist, perhaps his group of tacticians said, let us roll out a rule of might. Tubalage. I have been in spaces where some of the think tank members and the initial Avengers group members have been saying, we showed you our might. You have been saying our man is a drunkard. Now we have shown you, and everything he did, apart from rolling out military might, he showed you, he told you he was going to abduct him. He abducted him with military force. He took him and he wasn't ashamed of showing you where he had him. We produced him within 48 hours. Everything we did was military might within the law. Okay?
No, you know why, Dr. Nyanzi, you know why I call it panic? Yeah?
Tell me.
You can see there is all evidence to show you that it is not something that was well thought out. He wakes up in the morning, barely 48 hours, and he says, I am going to transfer him now to police because I've been advised by my wife. But those of us who know it was the uncle who called him, which means that the original action did not have prior consultation. Yeah, there was no prior consultation in the original attack. It was driven by the mere thought that somebody can even think of serving him court papers. So that's why I call it a panicky move. Yeah, had it been well thought out, you would say, okay, they are going to get him summoned, and then they will come with the summons and pick him, and they will have already have had an elaborate plan to process him through the police to prison pipeline. But now you see, they first of all detain him in the basement in the courts, then public pressure mounts, then insiders are not happy, and then he panics and says, but in Uganda you say mukarukaru tajja busera. He cannot say I've been ordered by my father or my uncle to release him. And then he says, oh, my wife has told him. Since when? And a few moments you're talking about Beyonce. These things don't add up. You see? So when you look at the trend of events leading to and immediately after the abduction of Elias Lukwago, you can agree with me that it was a panicky move.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if actually. So we're now splitting hairs. But what happened. I suppose for me, what I agree with you.
It was bound to happen. It was bound to happen.
What I agree with you is that it was not anticipated. So part of what worked very well was the surprise factor, and then I think what you call panic. I think Muhoozi had allowed himself to be elevated or hyped by his stooges to the point of thinking no one is audacious, no one can dare. And then these people using the very judicial process or justice system, they dared him. And they used Baguma, who we all thought was working for them, working against us. So when I call for creative sort of innovation around how else can we act, that was a masterstroke. Now, his response, was it panicky? Perhaps. For me, what I see in his response is this stubborn, obstinate refusal of saying, Sisemba nacho, kambalageko, kambalageko. Every day you've thought, you think I'm a military man and you question my sandhurst. Let me show you that we have the guns. And why I think it's well calculated, well thought out, the abduction of Lukwago, at least that moment of let's go into his house is for me, that's not a man in panic mode. That's an idiot rolling out his plan. They assume the assumption that Muhoozi is brilliant is an assumption. I think in military mode with his muscles and his guns, that is what they thought their comeback that would silence Ugandans would be. Not well thought out, bad for PR, bad in terms of the. So when you say let's isolate them, for me, I think one of the moments I celebrated is that the leaked phone call
between Otafire
and the EU Mariam. Mariam is a problem for those of us who resist against the Museveni, because she really whitewashes.
She's more of a lobbyist.
Yes, but also she does she undoes our reporting by propaganda and yes. So one of the most telling moments was when this video leaks and she talks about those tweets. And she is doing a hard work of patching up the shame that the regime is happening. So in terms of a response, I think Muhoozi didn't think beyond let's abduct him and let's show power. I don't think they thought beyond that, right? Was it panicky? Perhaps the rest, when the pressure comes, then the panic mode happens because they haven't thought beyond let's abduct Muhoozi and let's abduct Lukwago and show what we can do. This rolling in of all these men and the rolling, it was just idiocy on display, right? But and maybe let's not split hairs about it. For me, it just showed me that the think tank, if he has a think tank, the people who sit with him, I don't think he did it alone. He must have done it. The planning and the thought must have gone through some level of collective, tactical thinking, but it wasn't very well advanced. And so the spitting of Lukwago back. Also they abducted a weak vessel. Weak meaning physically, very strong in terms of the work he's done, rule of law, the speaking out. But in terms of his physical health, he was the worst character to abduct violently because Lukwago won't resist you. You take Stella Nyazi, I will fight until I pass out. Lukwago will beg. Okay, so the wrong character for the role. His posture was one of decorum, He's an ill person. So they didn't think through which character to abduct. If you want to abduct a person and you want to show your power, don't abduct a man who will pass out. Don't abduct a man you have to put pampers on. Abduct. Abduct. I don't know. But you understand what I mean. So in terms of thought, some thought was put into the work. It was just idiotic, not well developed thinking about how to speak to Baguma's summonses. But your point, which I think for me is important about rule of law, even against the military, is if we have people who can sleep. Baguma's move is a slippage. He slips and acts out of character and says, Muhoozi muwadde ekibaluwa. So what sort of pressure pushed him to that point? Those are important questions for us. What sort of pressure pushed him there? And now that we got there, Muhoozi has previously spat in the in the summons. He spat at the summons of our legislators when they summoned him to parliament. Yabaita clowns. He called them clowns and said, "Fuck you all," you know. And there wasn't a rejoinder.
A bunch of what?
Yeah.
Bunch of clowns.
Yes. So I called them clowns. He called them a bunch. It's even worse. I think mine was a bit better. But and he got away with that. He got away with that. Now the real test is going to come on the 30th. A day has been fixed.
The judge will not appear.
But whatever happens, a day has been fixed. Is he going to play the judiciary like he played the legislature? The call, I'm very perturbed by Lulume's call. And it goes to your point you were talking about, Gesa, about absolving or not absolving Museveni. These things, I'm not convinced that the Museveni who withdrew Muhoozi's posture of threatening Kenya, threatening all our neighbors, is the same Museveni in play right now. I don't think that Museveni is at all interested in instructing Muhoozi to cease fire. It doesn't work for them. How does it serve them?
But even the Kenya incident you're referring to, he was rewarded immediately with a promotion to Foster General.
That's why I want to question these people. Everybody,
his interest is selfish.
Everybody who is asking Museveni to talk to Muhoozi, very similar to your appeal to Muhoozi's cronies, to talk to, I think what your words was, I implore you to ask you, I think you said, talk sense to your man, you know, I implore you to rediscover your conscience. How does it serve the eating class of military men and the corrupt who sit with them around Muhoozi's ascendance to the throne? How does it serve them to caution him? It does not. How does it serve Museveni to tell his son what?
No, it actually serves them if they interrogate issues and they look at the bigger picture. It serves.
Do they?
You see, at the end of the day, nobody is safe in a sinking ship. If General Muhoozi is going to be the source of a genocide in Uganda, I don't think these guys will be spared. They will actually be.
I think they will. I live in Germany. You know that the Nazi rollout of fascism was not. It was carried out by everyday men who just thought they were doing their, you know. Like, do you think they think too much? Like, I wouldn't credit them with too much depth of thought. You think they think the ship is sinking? Maybe they think they have lifeguards, or they have rafters, or they have, I don't know. But perhaps, or maybe they think they have the parachutes. I don't know. And that for me bothers me. But the very last point.
That's why I'm trying to talk to them. I imagine they are living in an echo chamber. They need to hear voices that are different from the ones they are hearing in the choir.
I think the voice I want is not one that begs them, but one that forces sense into them. I will not join you in begging them to think about the broader picture, especially think through history of what has happened in these military dictatorships. But I will push these alternatives. But your last point that I wanted to respond to, then I will step down and listen to you, Egesa, is I really love this point about the face of faces of those resisting Muhoozi Kainerugaba. We must raise, and I think for me, it's going to be beyond one face. It's going to be multiple characters. Bobby Wine, sadly, for me, doesn't serve the cause. I don't see I don't think it's going to be, if it's one individual, they'll be taken out, like Lukwago was taken out, like Kiza Besigye was taken out, like, you know. And I'm thinking about the movement moment that we had. We've had different movements, but I think the People Power movement did something. I don't know how to re-engineer it, where a number of us were conscientized, we were aware, we were charged. I don't know how to have multiple centers of instruction, of leadership, of momentum, of reigniting hope. I think that looking for one particular charismatic person is dangerous because they'll snipe him out with one sniper, right? I think that the professional, I see work among the professional bodies. I like what Radical Nuba is doing, but already they began touching them, right? And so this charismatic public face with many players that can't be located, their finances can't be taken out, they can't be pinned down. Working with think tanks that are unknown, working with resources that are unknown, but conscientizing people to do something is exciting. That is what excites me, because, and I think we are very late, sadly. And why movements are important is because when you say nobody has monopoly over bad manners, movements have got multiple actors who can participate in reducing or countering or giving measure of the bad manners. And maybe I'm a dreamer, but my thought is that we can no longer work with the pyramid and the hierarchy of one face, one charismatic face, usually a man, middle class, middle-aged, to take the challenge against the military monarchy that's on display. But that is my thoughts in response to what you've said. And all of it is tentative, and that scares me. On the point of isolation, I think we are working in silos. While we think about isolating him, we are working alone. Many of us are working alone in different silos, doing important work, but working in silos. And again, thinking through mobilizing, innovating, organizing movements that are comprised with all sorts of configurations and units of players will call for us to find ways of de-isolating ourselves as we isolate the enemy. So yeah, that's my response so far. Maybe not very coherent, but yeah.
No, I hear you, Dr. Nyanzi. Thank you very much.
I guess before you proceed,
yes,
and I don't want to disrupt you, but I want you to think about some sections of society who are questioning the timing of this conversation and saying that this could be one of the smoke screens that happens usually to divert folks from speaking about very important issues. And in this case, they are questioning why we quickly abandoned the conversation about asking where the first lady is when he's going to swear in.
but Henry, yes. You know, there are certain people. I don't give them as in like a chance to get away with certain things. How important is where the first lady is when we are dealing with a leadership question? We are dealing with the future of Uganda. This is a conversation we're having right now. Where are we heading as Uganda? For me, where the first lady it doesn't compare in any way. How can someone out there say that is the more important issue than talking about the rule of law, the place of the military in our politics, and what is the future of Uganda in addressing the governance question? So I usually don't even want to platform certain ideas like those ones. Yeah. I am not interested in discussing individuals. The only reason I'm discussing General Muhoozi Kainerugaba is because he's a threat to our institutions. His father has spent the longest time claiming that he built a professional UPDF. But I've just told you, and we have already known, all of us, that the UPDF now is in the image of Muhoozi Kainerugaba. So which means that Muhoozi Kainerugaba has personalized what would have been a national army. So if he has personalized the national army, yeah, then we have a task to rebuild the national army. So if we thought that maybe we have an army and we are only going to have to deal with, building institutions in the political wing, now our problem is more than that. Yeah, it also involves the need to rebuild the national army, to have an army that knows that it is supposed to be subordinate to civilian authority. Yeah, so for me, discussions on where the First Lady is are as interesting as it comes to how it affects service delivery in the Ministry of Education. Yeah, and of course, like I told you, even when the First Lady has been in the best of health, I don't think she has been going to the ministry. I did discuss this. So I told you that ministry has been run by Honorable Muyingo and the technocrats. So as long as they are there, I can only ask them to up their game and offer meaningful service delivery. So I think the First Lady is there as a figurehead, not as a transformational figure. So her presence, therefore, in the ministry is not going to change service delivery. For the last 10 years, she has been Minister of Education, for instance. You haven't seen her do impromptu visits to schools to inspect schools, have you? Me, I haven't. Maybe you have. Perhaps you follow the news more than I do. So that's why I'm saying, for me, that's not the conversation I want to be dragged in right now. This conversation about rule of law versus the military is a conversation that is at the very heart of the future of Uganda. Yeah. So, in fact, I am one of the people who has kept this conversation in social media. And I am happy to play that part because maybe some people would have wanted us to begin discussing, is Muhoozi going to become president or not? He's too powerful now, what? And for us, we are saying, no, we are not going to discuss whether he has power or not, because nobody has a monopoly over bad manners, like I've said. What we should be discussing is, do we understand that the military has messed up this country for the longest time? Do we understand that? Yeah. Do we understand that going forward, we must understand that the rule of law is paramount to us having peace and tranquility as a country? Do we understand that for us to be to live as a secure country, we must actually position the rule of law at the helm of our politics, such that the bad manners of politicians, the bad manners of military actors do not take our country backwards? There is a key issue that I want to talk about right now. There was a contract signed by the Turkish government, yeah, on the SGR. I don't know if you have heard about that issue, Henry.
Not yet. I haven't followed it closely. I've seen the headlines,
government
but not
signed a contract with the Turkish government to come and construct the standard gauge railway, a project that has been talked about for the last 18 years or so, from around 2008 or so. However, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba goes on Twitter and unilaterally says, I have cancelled that contract. So this is why, for me, I think the conversation on what the role of the military is important, because now you can see that it derails so many things. What are the legal implications? What are the financial implications to Uganda as a country, to our treasury, if indeed he were to go ahead with his pronouncements and cancel that contract? You see my point? Why I want to disagree with your people who are talking about discussing individuals.
Our people.
Yeah.
Our people.
Okay, our people. Sorry, I stand corrected. So we should actually be discussing demilitarization. For me, I think something that we must not allow to go away from our discourse, public discourse, is demilitarization. We must demilitarize our public institutions. We must demilitarize our politics. If need be, yeah, we might actually be forced to go the other route of public mass action to demilitarize, because that is an option that comes at a very high cost, but it is an option that can erupt. It comes, naturally, it will erupt. The actions of the CDF this week place us in a very delicate situation. A delicate situation that stirs public anger. And when the public is angry, it will first go silent. And then it will be followed by total rebellion. Now, total rebellion, the Ugandan military does not have the capacity to stop total rebellion here. They don't. I remember.
I guess I have a question for you.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, as you were talking, it occurred to me that in your maybe all of us in our thinking, which could be flawed, we are conflating Muhoozi the person with the military, right? And while my question is not about downplaying his power as CDF, leader of the military, that's not what my question is about. My question is about the separation between Muhoozi the person and UPDF. Because when you say military takeover, I don't know the extent to which the entire military outfits, in plural, in Uganda are happy with what's happening. In fact, I'm certain there are many who are not saluting to the acts of last week, yeah, or this week it was, and who are horrified by what's happening in their name. And so, in terms of demilitarizing, in terms of questioning, I think we do ourselves a disservice as Ugandans in the resistance if we all think that Muhoozi Nebyakola represent Uganda's military. I think it's a small, select, elite group units that are subservient to Muhoozi and his capture of Uganda, right? I'm not sure it's the entirety of the military. Perhaps I'm naive and I don't understand how hierarchical military regimes
I think
work.
no. I think naivety is not the word, but maybe you just don't have the information that some of us have.
Okay, so is military is Muhoozi one and the same with the military?
Muhoozi, now the army is no longer our national army; is now a Muhoozi army.
The entire
like
UPDF?
I don't know. It can't be the entire, but key decision-making positions have been staffed by his proxies. Choir.
So how do we undo that? When you said demilitarize, how do we undo that as civilians who may not have a lot of support with the apex, the people at the top of the outfit? But you know, that for me is a question that arose as you were speaking, and I was thinking, surely
that question.
Can't. Yes.
And the people have always won that battle.
We missed the first part. We missed the first part of that response.
I'm saying that the question is as old as mankind. If you go back to all the empires in history, there is always the illusion of power that makes those that command the military think that they are invisible, and therefore they can subdue and subjugate people in perpetuity. But the people always win that battle. Now, the problem is when the people win the battle, what comes next? It can be a period of anarchy because when the masses win, there is no clear leader, and the masses have tested real power. You know, there is nothing as dangerous in politics as making the masses test real power. The moment the masses test the real power of toppling a regime, they become uncontrollable. So you end up, you know, with the confusion you see in Sudan, the confusion you see in Libya, the confusion that follows that mass action. Now, politicians usually agree to meet and align, regardless of their differences. They always agree to align their interests in preventing the masses from testing real power. So in that alignment, they tend to call it preservation of a democratic state. Like you saw in Kenya, when the Gen Z uprising came up in 2024, they were trying to dislodge a politician that had tried to capture the state. So, which is the same thing as trying to dislodge a military group or a military man that tries to capture the state. However, the politicians closed ranks. So you saw the late Raila Odinga closing ranks with the guys in government because now their common interest of fooling the masses is threatened. So they agree on one thing, that the masses must not test real power. So they close ranks, come together, and they use the clever wording like preservation of the democratic state comes first before our political differences. Yeah? So now, when I say the question is as old as mankind, at the end of the day, if the military or whoever wants to do a state capture does not realize that I either shape up or ship out, you ship out through mass action. When you ship out through mass action, the cost to the economy is always so high. Actually, the social and economic costs are so high. We could have avoided them if you used some bit of wisdom. But many times, these guys have, thrown all caution to the wind. They don't listen. That's why I'm saying most of the time, guys find themselves in an echo chamber where they're only listening to voices of sycophants. And the sycophants are only re-echoing the voices of the man. You see the way when the general tweets and then Balaam responds with the same words and tries to just stamp approval in the same words. That is the echo chamber in which this man lives. So most of the time, people who are doing a state capture are surrounded by sycophants that create that echo chamber in which they are living. So they create bad, tough times. I mean, I've said it's the political sobriety creed, that weak men will recreate the tough times that the strong men tried to deal with and create good times. So we end up in the bad times. That is the turbulence we are headed to. That solving this problem might not be as simple as we think. It might actually be a very turbulent time. It is going to be a very difficult time with a very high social and economic cost. I submit. Hey, we have hit the 3-hour mark.
I know. I think we should. I think we should wrap up. This has been a very long conversation, necessary one.
Apologies.
That's that. But yeah, I mean, when you're discussing the rule of law, it's easy to say that we are going to discuss it within 1 hour or 2 hours, but these are long conversations, and when we have to interrogate our own questions and our own answers as well, then chances are that sometimes you are going to surpass the times, the prescribed times that we set. But now, Longo, your thoughts as you wrap up so that we can leave this space.
My just to thank very much Egesa and yourself, Henry Sally, for engaging with these very difficult topics. I salute you for being unashamed, particularly Egesa, who is in Kampala and circulates every day with those people. Be safe, and tomorrow we wait to see what happens with Omrodi. But I think for me, he's just one out of many. The turbulence that has been prophesied or predicted by Egesa is just starting. We're going to see much worse. And I think for me, these questions will continue. I think rule of law will continue to be abused until Ugandans rise up to the occasion. So gachalima abaga twesibe bbiri. I don't know how. Yeah, like it's still early days. We have to prepare ourselves to do the hard work that the times demand. And I think for me, part of what I do with you guys on Sunday is part of my contribution. I wish I could do more. But thank you very much, and I look forward to next weekend. As we wait to see what happens, who else will be kidnapped,
Exactly.
abducted, etc. But also how the people are rising up to the occasion. Have a good week.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stella, for sharing those insights. I must say, I have not heard so many proverbs, Luganda proverbs, in 1 week that I've had in previously, in any of the previous events that have happened. I think ever since the abduction of the Lord Mayor Salongo Lukwago, there have been so many proverbs, including ones coming straight from Mengo by the Attorney General of the Uganda government, but also the different actors who are some of them are appealing to President Museveni to rein in on his son. Others are appealing to the friends, of course, to rein in on his son, on their friend. There have been so many proverbs. I hope he has the time to listen to these proverbs and figure out what the deeper meanings of what they mean. And hopefully, tomorrow is going to be a better conversation than what it is today. But yeah, I guess your thoughts as you wrap up.
You know, as you were talking about the proverbs, I recalled the words of Tamale Mirundi after the 2021 elections. You know, the 2021 elections had a shift in the quality of representation.
Right.
You had people not voting for people like Dr. Stella Nyanzi, and they were voting for comics, for politicians that wouldn't cut the grade in a serious country. So Tamale Mirundi said, Omuganda bw'abanga akukooye asooka n'aggyayo abantu ab'amagezi be yali akuweereza okuteesa nabo, n'akuleetera abadingidi. Bw'aggyayo abadingidi aleeta magye. I don't think I want to add anything.
Yeah. So you're, wow. Now,
yeah,
it's for you people out there to unpack. I think I have done what I have to do, offer the space for people to discuss these conversations. Advocate Segona was unable to join us, as well as Advocate Semakade. Obviously, some of you know why they were unable to join us. It's because of, I think, their engagement. They are preparing for tomorrow. Tomorrow is a very important day in some of these people's lives. They had hoped that it would be done. They would be done with the preparations by the time the conversation begins, but clearly they weren't done. But we shall be able to bring them in at a later date to continue engaging. I want to thank Advocate Semakade for coming in and letting us know that he wouldn't be able to be with us for the rest of the time.
Semakade is now senior counsel, my brother.
Senior
you
counsel.
should stop referring to him as just advocate. He's senior counsel.
Senior counsel and
he attained that status in a manner that does not require presidential assent. The president of Uganda does not have to issue any instrument naming him senior counsel. There are two people who can attain senior counsel without requiring presidential assent. And the other one actually, in a way, requires it. For if you are Attorney General, you become senior counsel, but that happens after president has appointed you. But the head of the bar, it is a democratic process. Once you are elected, you become senior counsel immediately. Yeah. So Semakade is senior counsel. Don't take the shine away from him.
It was never my intention to take away the shine from him. I have tremendous respect for him, and I'm privileged to associate with him in this.
Actually, if I could chip in, Semakade has reached the pinnacle of his legal career.
Right.
It doesn't go beyond that. The moment you attain the status of head of the bar, now we want Semakade in a political career. So that is where he's supposed to be now, after reaching the pinnacle of the legal career.
I hope that people who have been listening to this podcast can see where life is heading in Uganda. But I appreciate these conversations. Thank you so much again for joining the podcast. We shall definitely see what happens tomorrow, and then I'll come back next Sunday to engage in these conversations. For those folks who are following us, please continue to share, continue to subscribe, like. We need more people to learn. We are in a classroom that doesn't need tuition fees. So I appreciate the people that come in on a regular basis to educate us, but also to engage with our ideas. Dr. Stella, thank you so much. Egisa, thank you so much. God bless you. Happy Father's Day to everyone out there. God bless you.
Stay blessed.
This is the state of the nation. Rifa Uganda. We are deliberate, we are reasonable, we are uncensored. The state of the nation with Henry Salah.